Hey, it's John Boquette again, former president of NEMPA and editor at the Newtown Bee, coming to you from the Newtown Bee with the next session of really prestigious awards. And we're going to start things off with the Alan B. Rogers Editorial Award. This award recognizes the best editorial of the year in New England, and it honors the former editor of the Eagle Tribune of North Andover, Massachusetts, who died in 1964 at the age of 31. The competition is open to local subject editorials from a wide variety of newspapers in New England, regardless of circulation size and frequency of publication. This year's winner is the Alan B. Rogers Editorial Award goes to the New Hampshire Union Leader for its front page editorial confronting and condemning the shameful history of child sexual abuse by former publisher William Loeb. The editorial, part of a powerful page one package, came after Loeb's stepdaughter came forward in May of 2022 to say that Loeb sexually molested her repeatedly when she was 7 years old. The editorial acknowledged that Loeb had an outsized role in the political history of New Hampshire and at the newspaper, but got right to the point. Quote, "We know now that William Loeb is not a man to be celebrated." Explaining that the Union Leader has removed Loeb's name from the masthead, the editorial ended with the moral clarity that has defined a free press since the founding of our country. Quote, "This newspaper will continue to hold the powerful accountable, whoever they may be. That is our duty to this state and to our readers." Our next honoree is for the New England First Amendment Award. The New England First Amendment Award honors the association's record of leadership on First Amendment issues. The award is presented to a New England newspaper for the exceptional quality of its reporting, editorials, commentary, or legal challenges that illuminate or uphold the First Amendment or educate the public about it. And this year, the award goes to the Sun Journal of Lewiston, Maine. The Sun Journal's relentless, lengthy pursuit of public information and public access to a criminal trial occurring thousands of miles away from its main location is awarded this year's New England First Amendment Award. The Sun Journal's reporting on a Fairbanks, Alaska trial involving a local man charged with murder demonstrated a strong commitment to providing necessary information to its readers on a matter of public interest, persistence in pleading a case for full access to the trial and to crucial information, creating partnerships among news operations to gather and present information about the trial, and a financial commitment well outside normal newsroom operating circumstances. The entry charts a rigorous, persistent, well argued case for full remote access to trial proceedings and information about jury selection, while also arguing for and making proper use of new technological means of reporting on a criminal trial. The effort to improve the nature and quality of remote access to the Alaskan courts likely will linger for many years. As news organizations nationwide seek to rebuild public trust and confidence in good journalism, there is no better approach to that effort than doing the work well, in a manner that both informs the audience and educates it in the value to them of an independent and free press. Use of Alaska's own laws regarding trial coverage and audiovisual courtroom provisions, locating and working with a lawyer in Alaska, crafting direct letters and the filing of motions with the court, and gavel to gavel coverage of a trial of great local interest are hallmarks of journalism that both serve readers and go beyond daily reporting to include protection of the public's right to a fair and open system of justice. The next honors are for the Bob Wallach Community Journalism Award. This special award is named in honor of a longtime New England journalist and former New England Press Association Executive Director, Bob Wallach. The award recognizes an individual who has an exceptional record of commitment to community journalism. It's presented to someone who has faithfully served the community for which they're responsible and played an active, constructive role in contributing to its quality of life. Someone who truly exemplifies the ideal of a community journalist, just as Bob Wallach did. We're happy to present this award to Steve Collins from the Sun Journal of Lewiston, Maine. In her heartfelt nomination letter, Lewiston Sun Journal Executive Editor Judith Myers introduces staff writer Steve Collins as a principled journalist willing to quit his previous newspaper job on Christmas Eve, no less, to protest an ethical lapse by its owner. And while it's certainly true the bizarre circumstances surrounding his abrupt departure from the Bristol Press and subsequent relocation in Maine 8 months later remains a tawdry chapter in New England journalism, it would be a disservice to define Collins solely by his response to the episode, no matter how noble or just. More compelling in terms of his selection as recipient of this year's Bob Wallach Community Journalism Award is the remarkable breadth and scope of Collins' work over a career spanning more than 3 decades. Although each of the 2022 nominees were deserving candidates, it would be hard to find a journalist more valuable to a newspaper franchise or more impactful to Sun Journal readers throughout Androscoggin County than Collins. Simply put, his remarkable productivity has been surpassed only by a versatility all but gone from the newspaper industry. Mature and seasoned, Collins has proven himself adept at both straight and enterprise reporting during his years on the political and legislative beats. He also is a skilled researcher, adept at unearthing public documents and other data to connect the dots and enlighten readers, as well as an accomplished historian. Better still, he is a stylistic writer with a keen eye for detail who's able to keep readers engaged through sophisticated, extended narratives. While reading Collins' delightful work on the Sun Journal's recent 175th anniversary edition, it became hard to ignore the obvious parallels with his forebears at the newspaper. A throwback in many ways, he continues the proud lineage of Dartmouth College graduate Nelson Dingley Jr., who purchased the former Lewiston Falls Daily Journal in September of 1857 and found himself not only sole proprietor and editor, but also reporter, foreman, and bookkeeper. Collins probably hasn't been asked to keep the Sun Journal's balance sheets yet, but one senses that he would gladly pitch in if he was needed. Perhaps most noteworthy has been Collins' impassioned work with young journalists, both at the Sun Journal and also through Youth Journalism International, an educational charity founded by Steve and his wife, Jackie Mejers Collins, to mentor aspiring journalists around the globe on issues of writing, ethics, and media literacy. Not surprisingly, Collins cited his ongoing work with the nonprofit as a decisive factor in his 2015 decision to quit the Bristol Press. Thank you, Steve, for contributing to fight the good fight and reminding us, old fogies and young ones, why we were drawn to this business in the first place. And also for reminding us that for all its well-documented shortcomings, journalism remains a worthy and necessary calling more now than ever. Stand by and hear a few words now from Steve.
Steve, and I'm honored at this recognition. Community journalism is, after all, at the heart of our profession. I've never seen the role of journalists to be dispassionate observers or scribes merely taking note of what officials once said. We have a duty to promote a swirling, ever-changing debate about the issues and forces that shape the places where we live and work. We write stories to expose problems, spotlight solutions, and provide people with the information they need to choose wisely and well. The only agenda we should push is a broad and nonpartisan one to improve the quality of life in the communities we cover. I like to think I've made a difference everywhere I've been, including Maine, where I work now for great editors in a superb newsroom. This job always brings criticism and sometimes threats, but there is nothing more rewarding than finding a great story and telling it well. I often fall short, of course, but once in a while I also nail it, and that's so much fun. It wasn't quite so thrilling, though, when protecting a source early in my career landed me before a judge weighing whether to jail me for contempt, or when I faced the necessity on Christmas Eve 7 years ago to quit a job I loved to protest the grotesque ethical lapses of my boss. But I wouldn't trade any of it. I want to take a second to thank my wife, Jackie, who's a great journalist who now runs a thriving charity the two of us created years ago, Youth Journalism International. Teaching young people about journalism keeps our idealism fresh and our focus on the future. And thanks as well to those who have always stood by me and cheered me on, including my parents, Tom and Carolyn Collins, and my children, Kieran and Mary. What a lucky man I am.
Coming up next is the AP Savellin Brown New England Journalist of the Year Award. This award is bestowed by the New England Society of News Editors, and it recognizes an individual for producing journalism of distinction in New England this past year. The award is named in honor of Savellin Brown, the late editor and publisher of the Providence Journal Bulletin, founder of the American Press Institute, fellow of the Academy of New England Journalists, and past president and founder of New England Associated Press News Editors Association. This year's recipient of the award is Jill Harmakinsky, the Eagle Tribune, North Andover, Massachusetts. When the news broke that an arrest was finally made after 34 years in the murder of an 11-year-old girl in Lawrence, Massachusetts, reporter Jill Harmakinsky was all over it. Marvin McClendon, 74, who formerly lived in Massachusetts, was charged April 30th with the first-degree murder of Melissa Ann Tremblay, who was stabbed and left on the railroad tracks to be run over by a train in 1988. After reporting the initial arrest, Harmakinsky quickly requested that her editor send her to Bremen, Alabama, where McClendon now lived. Editor Tracy Raw brought the request to the publisher, and Harmakinsky was on a plane within 3 hours. Early the next morning, she made a long trek from her hotel to the family compound where McClendon resided. His sister and brother-in-law were at the house cleaning out their refrigerator. After Jill identified herself as a reporter, the sister shouted, "We don't know any more than they've written in the newspapers," and went inside. Harmakinsky did convince the brother-in-law to open up. She also located other family members, one of whom called McClendon a mean old man. After perusing the area and speaking to more people who wouldn't go on the record, she headed to the courthouse in the rural community that's not an actual incorporated town. At the courthouse, she requested the town clerk allow her to look through all public records related to McClendon. She read his 2 divorce decrees, one handwritten, his criminal record, which involved only numerous seatbelt violations. I guess he didn't like to wear a seatbelt, the friendly clerk said when handing over the file. And after finishing at the courthouse, Harmakinsky headed into town to find people who knew him and would talk. That evening, she made the hour's drive back to her hotel, the closest place to Bremen she could find to stay, and began writing a powerful narrative looking deeply into the life of a man accused of this heinous crime. She worked with Rao the following day, and a story was produced for the Sunday paper and website. Harmakinsky continued to report on the story and found more family members in nearby New Hampshire. McClendon was extradited to Massachusetts, arraigned and indicted, and is in jail awaiting trial. Congratulations, Jill. You're this year's AP Savellin Brown Journalist of the Year.
My name is Jill Armasinski, and I'm a reporter with the Eagle Tribune. And I'm incredibly honored and humbled to be the Savellin Brown Award winner this year. The story, the award-winning story, came together even though it focused on It was a series of stories that focused on a cold case murder from 1988 in Salem. The child who was murdered was an 11-year-old girl named Missy Tremblay. She was from Salem, New Hampshire, and the murder occurred in the southern section of Lawrence. When most reporters know this feeling, like nowadays, like your phone starts blowing up. And I was getting texts from sources that a big announcement was going to be made about a cold case. And there was a press conference that morning about the arrest of Marvin McClendon from Alabama. And it kind of went from there. It was a decent press conference with some detail, but then they said that they were going to be saving a lot of discussion about the evidence until his arraignment. McClendon was from Alabama. When you're a local news reporter, that's not travel's not generally something like you might go to Boston or you might go to Concord or whatever. So Tracy Rao and I had a discussion the next morning, and I said, you know, I'd go to Alabama on this. I think it's important that we find out who this guy is. Like, it's been 34 years since an arrest in this case. Has he been married? Does he have children? Does he have grandchildren? Does he have a record in Alabama? And she made a phone call and called me back and was like, you can go. And so I got a flight and I got a rental car, went to another house, which was actually his house. And I was able to talk to his brother-in-law for about an hour, which gave me some great background on who he was. But just the description of his neighborhood alone was so different than many of the areas we see up here in New England. And then from there I left and I just tried to get as much. I went to the county courthouse and looked up his criminal record and his divorce papers. They were very, very kind, like a breaking news story for the Sunday edition. So I actually wrote in Alabama from the hotel room and from the lobby. Like, I moved around different places just to help with the writing. And then once it was done, I flew, you know, kind of simultaneously while it was being printed for the Sunday edition, flew back. And then from there, I've just been trying to dog the case in court each way it goes. McClendon is now in Essex County. He's in protective custody at Middleton Jail. You know, and I was also very fortunate that about 5 years ago, one of the murder victim's friends had contacted me because she was frustrated that more hadn't been done on the case with new technology and DNA and that kind of thing. So I had done a big feature story then and collected a bunch of information about Missy Ann Tremblay. So we had all of that we could just put right into our story. But I will say, I was very, very fortunate because you have to have that support. You know, I had the support from the Eagle Tribune and our parent company and our editor and our publisher, and that everyone, I mean, at one point I was like, what if I get down there and I don't find a story? And they were all like, which I think is a natural reaction. Like, you're always trying to check yourself. And I was a little bit nerved up, and they were like, you'll get a story. You'll get a story. You need those people to keep pushing you along the way because you are working alone. And you're, you know, up against, you know, meeting strangers on front lawns and going to courthouses you've never been before. But you just got to keep pushing forward and grab the story. So I just want to say that I've been a news reporter since an internship in 1991 while I was still in college. And even after all these years, I still love breaking news and great stories. And I'm still very passionate about what I do. And I think that's important, that I think that if you're not passionate, if you're not excited when breaking news happens and big things happen, whether it's good or bad, happy or sad, then it's really like you have to have kind of that light behind you, like ready to go forward. And I'm just tremendously thankful to be recognized for my work.
Story and well deserving of this prestigious honor. Congrats to all these award winners. Next up is our honors for Newspaper of the Year. And we're back. It's John Boquette coming to you from the Newtown Bee. Welcome to the final session of the 2022 New England Newspaper Awards. We're going to recognize New England's Newspapers of the Year. You know, every year, the New England Newspaper and Press Association identifies the region's best daily, weekly, and specialty newspapers and recognizes them with this prestigious New England Newspaper of the Year award. Winners are named in a range of circulation categories. This is a one-of-a-kind competition, and it's the only distinction of its kind in the newspaper industry that's judged by audience members and readers. New England newspaper readers are appointed to evaluate the entries from a news consumer point of view and decide which deserves the honor of being named Newspaper of the Year. All newspapers in the contest not only have a chance to be chosen for the award, but they also get feedback from newspaper readers about the strengths and weaknesses of their print and digital publications and how their paper stacks up compared to similar sized papers in the region. Readers evaluate every paper's relative strengths and weaknesses, including the quality of reporting and writing, the use of photos, design and presentation, digital offerings, overall utility and value, and general impressions like, does the newspaper inform, educate, entertain, inspire, motivate, or lead? Does it reflect and care about the community it serves? Does it put the interests of the readers first? Is it unique or special in some way? Well, certainly all of the following newspapers are very special, and let's let you in on the New England Newspapers of the Year for this year. We're going to start with specialty publications. We've got two distinguished entries, New Boston Beacon and Worcester Magazine. But in the specialty publications category, the Newspaper of the Year goes to the Providence Business News. Congratulations. Next, weekly newspapers with circulation less than 5,000. Our two distinguished choices are the Mount Desert Islander and the Martha's Vineyard Times. But in the under 5,000 circ category, this year's Newspaper of the Year is the Vermont Standard. Next, in the weekly newspapers category with circulation more than 5,000, our distinguished newspapers are 7 Days and the Inquirer and Mirror. But in the over 5,000 circ, the Newspaper of the Year in the weekly category is the Provincetown Independent. Kudos. Next, it's the daily newspapers with circulation less than 10,000. We've recognized three distinguished publications, the Brattleboro Reformer, the Gloucester Daily Times, and the Patriot Ledger. But in this category, the Newspaper of the Year is the Keene Sentinel. Congratulations. Our next category is daily newspaper circulation between 10 and 20,000. Our distinguished papers in this category are the Berkshire Eagle, the Daily Hampshire Gazette up in Northampton, Mass, and the Day of New London, Connecticut. But our Newspaper of the Year, also from Connecticut, goes to the Record Journal in Meriden. Our next category is daily newspapers circulation over 20,000. Our distinguished pair of publications are the Republican in Springfield and the Providence Journal. But the Newspaper of the Year goes to the Republican American in Waterbury, Connecticut. My hometown paper. Started carrying it when I was 8 years old. And next are the Sunday newspapers. We'll start in the category that includes those with circulation less than 25,000. The distinguished papers in this category are the Eagle Tribune, the Record Journal, and the Day of New London. But the Newspaper of the Year goes to the Berkshire Eagle up in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And finally, Sunday newspapers with circulation over 25,000. Distinguished publications are the Providence Journal and the Telegram and Gazette of Worcester. But the Newspaper of the Year in this category goes to the Republican of Springfield, Massachusetts. Congratulations to all the winners, and I hope everyone has enjoyed the conference this year and is taking something away from it. We can't wait to see you in the spring, but for now, I'm John Boquette, coming to you from the Newtown Bee. Thanks for being part of this year's conference, and congratulations again to all the winners.